I remember like I'd actually crying because I couldn't read. Like it was so difficult understanding words, and I was thinking, these I can't read these big words, and everyone can read them. At that point, I would. Now that I'm old and wiser, and I've kind of learned to appreciate my dyslexia and see it as a superpower, I would say I wouldn't change it now because it's part of my personality. It's part of who I am. It's like it's the whole way that your brain is kind of wired.
Today's guest is my dear friend James Mal, a freelance web and graphic designer based in Bedford, Bedfordshire. Having worked with a variety of clients, his portfolio includes fashion swimwear, academics, coaches, property, charities, and photographers. He now specializes in building websites for business coaches. He loves and believes in helping coaches to build a better web experience for their clients and themselves. He comes from a marketing background with a BA marketing degree. James is highly creative, artistic, and has an eye for detail. And his business mindset is something he has discovered with time. And he's also dyslexic. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks for inviting me along. It's great to be here.
Thank you. What is one of the most courageous things you have done? I'm sure there's many, but what is one of them?
One of the most courageous things I've done is, I would say, completing my dissertation at university. For a lot of people, it wouldn't seem like nothing, but for me, being dyslexic, I really struggled with it. Writing, I think it was like 10,000 words or whatever it was. It was a lot of words. Just struggled with the research and putting it together. I managed to put that all together in about 6 or 7 weeks, so just under 2 months. And that was quite last minute as well. So I had a bit of extra time. But yeah, I managed to get there and get that done. That was a difficult period.
Yeah, it's a great achievement. When did you find out you were dyslexic?
I discovered I was dyslexic when I was I would say probably about 9 or 10, or when I was sort of starting middle school. In year 5 or year 6, I remember being sort of taken out of the class by one of the teachers and being told that I needed sort of extra support and extra help. Just remember doing tests, them telling me I was sort of dyslexic and needed help with reading and writing. And then I was part of like a book club at school where we would kind of get together every morning and read. That was quite helpful actually, because I did struggle with my reading.
Yeah, that sounds great. So tell me more about how it felt knowing you were dyslexic.
When I first found out that I was dyslexic, it was almost like being called thought of as like a dumb kid, because a lot of kids that kind of had learning difficulties or dyslexia at the time, other kids would laugh at them and call them names and tease them. Going to reading club at the time, it wasn't a cool thing, believe it or not. I had friends, but like even they didn't really want to associate with me that much because I was like going to reading club.
That's a shame.
But it did improve my reading ability, and it was quite funny because the following year I remember a few of them having to come to reading club actually because they needed help with their reading. So then it kind of almost became a kind of a cool thing because a lot of people in our sort of year group did need help with their reading, and so reading club was quite a good way of doing that.
Oh. Yeah, so it from not being a great club to be in, it's the cool club all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Have you always struggled with your reading?
Yes, as far back as I can remember. When I was sort of in lower school, I remember when in sort of year 1 or 2, I got taken out. My parents wanted me to go to boarding school in India. It was to... academically, they felt that it would be better for me, as my brothers didn't. They just went through sort of normal schooling and they had their own struggle. Me being the youngest, going to boarding school in India, they felt that would be a great help for me. And I appreciate them, everything that they did for me and take it, the cost of going there, they had the best intentions for me. However, when I got to boarding school, I really kind of missed my parents, my mum, my brothers. I struggled when I was there with my reading and my writing. Used to get corporal punishment was a thing there in India. So, you used to get caned and all that.
Mm.
In here, when you go to school here, they talk about stuff like that in the history books, but it actually happened to me over there. And it was difficult because obviously with a lot of the other students, whenever you'd get punished, you'd kind of get punished together. So in PE classes, for example, we'd all have to press ups and run around. And a lot of the times the students would take that out on me later. And it was a boarding school, so I'd kind of have to live with them. And that's something that's a bit traumatic that I've kind of blocked.
Yeah.
And it's only recently that I've kind of started to think about that. But yeah, I used to get quite picked on by a lot of the students and teachers. Yeah. I came back after about sort of 9 or 10 months. My parents, everyone was kind of missing me, and I wasn't doing too well there. So I came back, and when I came back, I think at the beginning of sort of year 2 or 3, I forgot most of my English. Okay. Other than hello and bye, I spoke mostly in Punjabi. That sort of first year was interesting because I had to relearn a lot of basic English, and I remember sort of going to these classes where I had to learn the phonetic alphabet and kind of pronunciation of words like cats and and kind of putting your teeth together and all of that. I had to go through all of that whole process again. So that was very interesting. But that's as early as back as I can remember having issues with my sort of reading and writing and kind of learning. And then going into middle school, finding out that I was dyslexic. That's when I found out I was dyslexic.
But yeah, saying that, despite all of that, and it couldn't have been easy. I mean, I can definitely understand you missed your family. You've done really well to have a university degree. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so going to uni, told me when I was in school, when I was in sort of upper school, for go to uni, I'd kind of think, nah, it just wouldn't be a possibility because my reading and writing was terrible, it was so bad. And then in sixth form, I started to kind of improve. Even getting into sixth form was quite difficult. Done quite well in my GCSEs at school. Managed to get 5 sort of A to C. Most of them were C's, I think about 5 or 6 C's, and the rest were D's. But it was enough to get me into sixth form. And from sixth form, doing A levels, struggled with my A levels a little bit. Managed to get through that, and then got myself into uni, ACAS. Initially with uni, I did struggle a little bit being away from home, new learning environment. But I've got to say the first year was probably my most easiest in terms of academically. A lot of the times I would just watch videos, marketing, and I did a degree in marketing. My tutor would show me a couple of famous kind of gurus and authors in marketing. And rather than kind of reading their books, I would just literally watch their videos. And through that, I managed to pass my first year. Gradually just got better and better, and just managed to get through my dissertation and then graduate. I would say with each coming year, I made massive improvements. The more I kind of applied myself, I managed to pull through, graduate.
Yeah, definitely been watching videos and helping you learn. So you're a visual learner like most dyslexics are. Would you change anything about being dyslexic?
It's an interesting question. When I was younger, I definitely would. I'd give anything at that time to be normal because I used to literally struggle with my reading and writing. Like I remember, like I'd actually cry because I couldn't read. Like it was so difficult understanding words, and I was thinking, these I can't read these big words, and everyone can read them. At that point, I would. Now that I'm older and wiser, and I've kind of learned to appreciate my dyslexia and see it as a superpower, I would say I wouldn't change it now because it's part of my personality. It's part of who I am. It's like. It's the whole way that your brain is kind of wired. Absolutely. And you just, it's almost impossible to kind of change it now. There's parts of my personality that I really like in terms of talking to you a couple of months ago, and you said that humor was quite a big part of it as well. And I'm quite fast sometimes with jokes and humor. So yeah, it makes a huge part of my personality. So I wouldn't change it now.
Excellent. Because it is viewed as a gift, and I see it as a gift being dyslexic myself.
Yeah.
And then you've got 49% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. There's so many great things. Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, and then you've got Richard Branson. I mean, the list goes on. Creative people. You've got in the film industry.
I mean, Einstein was dyslexic. One of the greatest mathematicians that ever lived. Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers that ever lived. And you're saying Richard Branson, one of the best British entrepreneurs we've ever had. What's interesting, what I find, it's an interesting mindset because with Richard, I think before he started Virgin Airlines, there was a guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was a guy back in, I think, the 70s. He had tried to set up a competitor to British Airways, and he had kind of failed, basically. And Richard is just kind of one of Richard's mentors. So this guy, I think in the 90s, had him as a mentor. So the guy literally told him about everything that he had kind of failed at with the airline. Richard used all of that to make Virgin Airlines, not make the same mistakes. But what's interesting about that is a lot of people wouldn't do that, because a lot of entrepreneurs would have successful mentors that have, made it. And so I think that's part of probably some of the dyslexic mindset, is kind of looking at people that necessarily haven't done well in the past and kind of analyzing that and kind of not making those mistakes, but taking the time to use their experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is quite interesting.
Yeah, learn from that.
Yeah.
So what took you on your journey of web and graphic design?
So my journey started 10 years ago. So when I left sort of university, I did a few internships. I didn't really particularly enjoy making coffee for people and kind of them giving me tasks that were kind of a bit meaningless. And sometimes I would struggle at simple tasks, and I kind of didn't like that as well. But it was through working with my former boss, Sarah, took me under her wing, and she saw that I had a bit of an entrepreneurial kind of spirit in me. I was kind of creative, and she saw that I had an eye for design. Decided to kind of help me and kind of mentor me. She was like a business mentor, coach, consultant at the time. So she used to go into small businesses and help them with their kind of marketing and their business and improving how they did things. Working with her was great, because I got to kind of work with a couple of local businesses, work on ways of improving their marketing, their business functions. And then from there, she had her own sort of signage business, like a wall art decals. You stick them on walls, and she used to sell them on eBay. And I remember at the time when I was doing an internship, I remember calling her and I'll be like, Sarah, I really don't want to do this internship. So I was like, can you teach me how to make decals and, do what you do and work from home? I was like, that's really cool. I want to do that. And she was like, yeah, sure, I'll teach you. And she was like, as long as you don't copy what I'm doing, but you do your own thing. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll make my own designs. Taught me how to design a little bit, and then I made my own designs, and I started selling on eBay, working from home. I became a really good power seller on eBay. I sold over, I had over like 1,000 feedback. So I was like I got to like a bronze, silver. I don't think I quite got to a gold level, but I got to about silver level, where I was pretty good. I had like 99.9 or 8% feedback, so it's almost like 100%. It was good feedback. And then from there, I got an office, and I worked from there for a few years and was doing the eBay stuff. And then I was doing a lot of offices and shops. A lot of businesses were coming to me and saying that they needed signage. I was doing a lot of signage for local businesses, and that was really great for a little while. And then things on eBay started to take a bit of a turn. China, there's a lot of competition from China. I couldn't compete with China.
Nobody can compete with China.
Yeah, they were just making it really difficult. They were copying some of my designs.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and then they were undercutting me in terms of prices, so it was very difficult. And then towards the end, I just didn't kind of enjoy the making of it, and kind of, because I almost came like an employee, so I was almost kind of just there packing orders and making them. Wasn't doing a lot more of designing at the time, and I knew that I could do more in terms of my marketing, my business brain, and I knew that I could do more. I always knew that I could use my brain.
Yeah.
So I decided to kind of get back into work at that time, just to get some more marketing experience, start earning some decent money again. And then I did that for about a year, and then a couple of my clients started coming back to me and saying, they needed designs, they needed logos and business cards and stuff doing. So I started doing stuff for them, and then it was going really well. And then I just left, because I was like, getting my clients started coming back to me. So I was doing the client work again. Web was another thing that kind of accidentally fell into. So my friend, who's a really good web designer, he was going to design my website. He got really busy with work, and he just couldn't do it. he was like, you're going to have to do it. He's like, I'll show you a few things, but you're going to mostly have to watch YouTube videos and figure out for yourself. So I spent like the whole summer, that summer, just learning about websites and making my own website. Ended up making it about 2 or 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Such a perfectionist. Once I had made my website, then did a couple of friends of mine just to get some more experience. And then clients started asking me for websites, and then doing client websites, and then gradually just started branching out. And that's how I got into sort of graphic design and web design. Yeah.
What is it like being a creative designer?
It's good. It has its own ups and downs. Not every day you wake up wanting to be creative and wanting to design. Sometimes you have to do accounting or paperwork and putting client contracts together and quotes and invoices together. But being a designer, I'm a self-taught designer. I've learned very much from YouTube videos and a few people around me. So I've not been to any kind of university or college, done any kind of formal training or anything like that. I sometimes do wish I had though, because I feel like that would have been a great help. Because I've had to learn the hard way. For example, in print design, you have what's known as bleed lines. So whenever you design a piece of artwork, you will have to have a line that goes at the edge where the machine will cut. So you have to design within that line. And I didn't know what a bleed line was at the time. So when I sent the artwork off to the printers, I was like, yeah, it's all there, print it. And the guy was like, what's this? And he's like, where's the bleed lines? Where's this? I was like, what do you mean bleed lines? And then he had to explain to me what bleed lines were. So I had to kind of get schooled by that guy. And then it was interesting. You learn a lot of stuff on the job. You make a lot of mistakes, but you learn from them and your process gets a lot better. Like I said, being creative, it can have its ups and downs. You're not always feeling creative all the time. So a lot of the times you have to kind of rely on your process, have a fixed set of sort of design principles and things that you go through with yourself and your client, get you through the process. But it is quite an enjoyable experience at the end when you can see the finished product. That's the most exciting thing about it.
So being dyslexic, do you have any hobbies, interests that you find you gravitate towards naturally?
A couple of years ago, I randomly kind of got into creative writing and kind of poetry. That was something, when I was at school, I'd never have done it. But for some reason, I felt drawn to writing and poetry. And I joined a couple of writing groups locally here in Bedford. They really helped, I've got to say, because I got to listen and hear other great sort of writers and poets talking and speaking about their process, and just hearing what they had written. They always gave me such great encouragement. That was something that was really cool. I think once you leave school and you get into the workplace, I think encouragement, you don't have teachers or people encouraging you as much. And I think sometimes you need that. And I think sometimes even when you don't feel like you've done a good job, when I've written stuff, I feel like it was rubbish. But it's always great when people say, keep going and like what you've written there, and they kind of remember something that you've written. And every time you see them, sometimes they'll quote something back to you and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe you remember something that I had written. But in terms of dyslexia, just helped me get stuff on paper inside my own head that I normally wouldn't have done. If I wasn't part of those groups, I don't think I would have done half of the writing I did. So I'm just always grateful for those writing groups.
That's excellent.
I like problem solving. So through being a web designer, I get to learn a lot about making websites and the good, the bad, and everything sort of in between. A lot of the times, because of the software that you're using, various kind of plugins and features that add extra functions to the website, with various kind of updates, they can break down. So there's a lot of investigation that you have to do sometimes. Something that's kind of was working yesterday, is it stopped working today? Why has it stopped working? You kind of have to really look at the back end of the website, analyze what's going on. Yeah, there's a lot of investigation that goes on. People don't always appreciate that. As a client, I think the only time people will complain is when something stops working. But the challenges, fix a lot of problems, and do a lot of problem solving.
To be honest, being dyslexic, that's one of our greatest assets, because I don't know if you remember a while back, they had the Bletchley Circle, MI5, as in the media, they were looking for dyslexic people to work with them for solving problems for that purpose. So that was really interesting.
Yes, I heard about that. And the term now called dyslexic thinking,
Mm-hmm.
quite a recent thing I've heard about in the last couple of months. But I think now what you can do is on LinkedIn, because I'm quite active on LinkedIn, you can add as one of your skills, you can add dyslexic thinking to one of your skill sets.
That's right.
So that's anyone that's kind of involved problem solving. You know, a lot of dyslexic will have a different mindset to how they fix problems and deal with issues and challenges. Yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah. So what do you recommend for anyone that wants to follow their passion and they're dyslexic?
I would recommend that people just follow what you want to do and find other people that are probably dyslexic in your industry. With me, I've looked up to people in the past like Richard Branson and entrepreneurs like that. You could be in the fashion industry, so look for someone in the fashion world. If you're in the restaurant world, look for someone in the restaurant world. I think Jamie Oliver might be dyslexic.
Yes, he is.
People like that, just follow them and follow their journey and how they've kind of dealt with it. Sort of get help, read up on dyslexia, how you can improve yourself, how you can get extra help and support. There's a lot of free government help and advice available there, and there's also a lot of grants available as well from the government, and you could get even help with the equipment. So if you're starting a business, for example, or if you're in work, you can get help, I think, with buying laptops and computer software that you need as well. So that's still available. Well worth checking that out.
Definitely.
Also, audiobooks for me have always been a great source of help. I've got an audiobook here, Art Must Foul, by a teacher. I was given to it by a teacher called Mrs. Bowden in 2002. She was one of the first teachers that got me into audiobooks and Harry Potter. So I used to listen to them on audio cassette back in the day, and that was a huge help in terms of improving my reading ability, especially with the technology nowadays. We've got, MP3s, you've got Spotify, you've got YouTube. You could get access to so much audio out there, and if money's an issue, you don't have to buy a lot of stuff. A lot of audiobooks a lot of free audiobooks are in the public domain. So a lot of old books, you can find audios of them on YouTube if you search for them. So that's a great help as well. So this stuff that's freely available now. Technology has improved a lot. Speech recognition software I've got built into my laptop where it can dictate and translate what I'm saying. That helps sometimes when I'm typing or thinking about writing something. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Just have a chat with other dyslexic people and get help and support. I think there's so much available when you start looking.
Definitely. Where can the listeners find you online? What's your website?
The website is jamesmal.co.uk. That's Mal, MALL. So you can find out my design work on there. Social media links are all on there. I'm also quite active on LinkedIn. So if you just search for my name, James Mal, you'll find my LinkedIn profile on there. So any of the coaches out there, happy to connect. Even with non-coaches, people that are struggling with the dyslexia or want extra help or advice, I'm happy to kind of help as well. Yeah, feel free to connect with me on my website and LinkedIn.
Yeah, and your details will be in the show notes. Thank you for sharing your courageous journey with us today. And by doing so, you have helped so many. James Mal.
Thanks very much, Anita, for inviting me along. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. So my final question to you, James, is what is your definition of courage? Because this podcast is Create the Courage to be Fearless.
So my definition of courage is anything that you've kind of had to overcome as a difficult obstacle, and that you've kind of had to get out of your comfort zone to achieve. That is probably my definition of courage, simply put.